Endurance Junkie Podcast, episode 102. Hey Junkies, what's up? Thanks for joining me on a new episode of the Endurance Junkie Podcast, the show where I will be interviewing some of the fastest, smartest, and most inspiring people active in the endurance world today. Now, if you like these little interviews and don't want to miss any future ones, just head over to iTunes or Stitcher and simply subscribe to the show. I would also like to thank everyone who has left a rating and a review on iTunes or Stitcher. That's much appreciated. And if you haven't done so yet, please consider leaving me one and help grow the show. We're also available on Spotify, so if that's your preferred medium, just search for Endurance Junkie Podcast in the search bar and you will find me no problem. Right, on today's show we have Heather Fell, and Heather is a Beijing Olympic silver medalist in modern pentathlon, a discipline that's made up of 5 sports: épée fencing, pistol shooting, freestyle swimming, show jumping, and cross-country running. Since retiring in 2014, Heather has established a career in media, working as a commentator at the Rio Games in 2016 and as a co-host of triathlon's biggest YouTube channel, the Global Triathlon Network. Last year, Heather made her Ironman debut herself in South Africa, where she immediately qualified for the World Championships in Kona. Hi Heather, thanks for coming on the show. Now, for those of us who don't know you, can you start off by telling us a bit about yourself and your sporting background growing up and how you ended up competing in modern pentathlon?
Okay, well, so I was from a farming background in rural, the West Country in the UK, so Devon, if anybody knows the UK well, and basically just loved doing anything outdoors and anything active and sporty. And both of my parents were amateur jockeys. So they rode in what's called point to point in the UK, which is basically it's horse racing at an amateur level. And they rode in some big races as well. My granny did. So basically horses were in my family and I didn't have a choice whether I was going to learn to ride or not. So I was riding by the age of 2. So I grew up with horses and I rode bicycles, went sailing, went running. I was very lucky in that sense that I got to do a lot of everything. I joined the swimming club when I was, I think, about 10. Maybe it must have known it was 8, I think, because I was racing by the age of 10. I loved swimming. And loved like the friends I met in swimming club and started to kind of progress a career in swimming and wanted to be a swimmer. And on the other side, I was still doing all the other sports. But I got a swimming scholarship when I was 13 to go to a swimming school. So in the UK, we have private schools. So it was a private school, but my scholarship was so I could swim. So I swam 10 times a week from the age of 13 to the age of 18 and loved it. It wasn't like I used to have to go and knock on my parents' door to get them to take me swimming and have to like knock twice and get up earlier. And people don't believe me now because I'm so bad at getting up in the morning, and I was then. But if I have to be somewhere and I know the exact time, like I'd walk onto poolside about a minute before the session started, but I hated to miss anything. Like if I missed a bit, I'd have to do a bit at the end. So it wasn't like I was lazy. And now people are like, how did you go training at 5:30 in the morning? I did it for 5 years and I don't know how, because it was every morning I'd just like couldn't wait till I could go back to bed or have a nap. And much to my teacher's despair, I had quite a lot of my naps in my lessons as well, which I think most swimmers could relate to. But then I also talked a lot at school, so they quite liked that because it meant I was quiet. So every cloud. But I carried on doing other sports as well, but really wanted to make it in swimming. And I was a very dedicated trainer, so to speak. I trained hard and I didn't miss sessions, like I said. But I realised that I wasn't quite going to make it in swimming. And I got to nationals every year from the age of 12 up to 18, but I never really performed that well at nationals. I was a breaststroker originally, but kind of got more into front crawl because you need that pentathlon on triathlon. And then by the age of 16, I realized in swimming as a girl, if you're not really cracking it by then or not showing that you're likely to, you're probably not going to. Having said that, I carried on doing PBs until I was 18 and won my first county championship at the age of 18, which is a bit ironic because I was studying for A-levels and things. But in the meantime, I was doing a sport, and this is going to confuse people, called tetrathlon. Tetrathlon, basically. And it's an event. There's not in many countries. It's the UK. Australia, Canada, and America, pretty much. And it's something called the Pony Club, which is basically, it was devised back in the 70s for boys to try and encourage them to stay involved with horses, because a lot of guys, when they get to the age of like 14, they get bored of horses and think girls are more interesting. So they thought if they add in, so obviously horse riding is part of it, then there's shooting, swimming, and running. So I was brought up, already could run because I ran for school cross country and county cross country, and obviously I had a good swimming background and a riding background, and I actually learned to shoot at the age of 8 so I could do this sport. So I've been doing this alongside my swimming, and I did fairly well in it because lots of the good riders weren't necessarily good swimmers, and good swimmers wouldn't do it because if you couldn't ride you wouldn't be doing it, if that makes sense. So basically I, at the age of 15, went to my first nationals and won my age group, but came third in the sort of open, which is 21 and under because it only gets up to that age. And then the year after I went back and I won it. And I beat a girl who was actually off to Junior World Championships. And I was like, what's that? And I was in modern pentathlon. I was like, oh, what's modern pentathlon? She's going to somewhere abroad. Like, that's crazy. And I was like, what do I have to do? And ironically, the people who taught me to shoot when I was sort of 8 and they were still coaching me, their daughter went to the first Olympics that modern pentathlon was at for the women in 2000 in Sydney, and the UK won a gold and a bronze, and Kate, whose parents were teaching me, she won the bronze. So I kind of had all these signs, and in a sense it was quite natural for me to go into pentathlon because there's not, as I've explained, that pony club to triathlon doesn't go very far. It's a pretty small sport, and you think pentathlon's minority sport, and that takes extreme. So I was like, oh, well, I'll have a go at this sport. What have I got to do? Well, I had to learn to fence. And for anyone listening who has no idea and is as clueless as I was, fencing is sword fighting. I didn't even really know that. I didn't know that when I was 12 because I had a fencing club at school and I had no idea what it was and just thought, oh, that sounds weird. I won't go to that. So I could have started much earlier, but I didn't actually start fencing until I was 16. And I was terrible, like really terrible. And it was really depressing because now looking back, I was like, 16 sounds young, but at the time I was like quite old to start a new sport, like a completely new sport. And there were loads of kids who were better than me who just hit me. Like obviously within the sport, they're allowed to hit me, but I would, coming home from training, I'd go every Thursday night and I'd go to lifting because it's before I had got my driving license, and I'd already have swam twice that day and probably been running at lunchtime as well and had school all day. And I remember going to fencing, just being absolutely exhausted, knowing I had to get up at 5 the next morning to be in the pool at 5:30 and just sort of getting through it. And it was always like a late one, didn't get home till like 10:30. And it just had all the wrong like negative signs to it. And but I had a purpose, so I stuck at it because I was like, I want to do this sport called pentathlon. And eventually I was like, oh, I think I'm good enough to have a go at a pentathlon. And my biggest regret is not trying it sooner, because I waited quite a while of going to fencing lessons and fencing sessions, and I entered a novice pentathlon. But I didn't realize that if you come in through the normal system, the riding is the last thing you add. So the only novice part of this competition was the riding, and I was like, why are the jumps so small? So I actually I should have done it way before, and it was nowhere near as scary as I expected, and I did quite okay, and then soon got caught the eye of the selectors, and then things progressed much quicker. But I had a bit of a dilemma when I finished school, because obviously by then I'd realised I wasn't going to be a swimmer, and I was like, I'll have a go at this sport called pentathlon and see what happens. But I also wanted to go and study physiotherapy at university, and in Great Britain, the National Training Centre for Pentathlon, because pentathlon is quite a big sport here, it's funded by the lottery, so it's it's got a lot of backing because it's an Olympic sport and we win medals. But the National Training Centre is in Bath, where I am now, which is sort of next to Bristol, if anybody knows, in a couple of hours from London. But there wasn't a physiotherapy course at this university. It's a great uni, but didn't do physio and still doesn't. So I went to London, and much to my coach's disapproval, my parents' disapproval, but I thought, it's 3 years. I'm only 18. I need to do this because I don't know what will happen in the sport. I wasn't thinking it would take me where it did. And yeah, so those 3 years were really tough. But within that, I won the Junior World Championships. So at the age of 20, which is juniors 21 and under in pentathlon, I won Junior World. For me, massively out of the blue, because earlier that year I was selected for European Championships and they deselected me in May, and the Junior Worlds were in September, and I got picked and managed to stay in the team, and then went and and obviously was top Brit, but won the world. So that, I think, was a big turning point in my career, like for confidence for me, but also for the coaches to realize that I'm serious, and the selectors to sort of take say yes, she's not in the training center, but she's obviously doing something right while studying. And uni was tough, but it taught me a lot, because physiotherapy is a lot of hours, and you've got to be in hospital and placement, so you're on your feet, and you've got to be there from 8 till 4, plus like a couple of hours travel either side in London if it's on the other side of London, which one of my placements was. So I got very good at managing my time, and I trained with different. So I trained with a swimming club, I fenced with a fencing club, which was a massive help for my career, because fencing with people you've got to fence with people who are better than you. I mean, most sports you do. If you do it with someone better, you're going to improve, but fencing even more so, because it's one-on-one. Riding didn't matter. I kind of couldn't afford to do that in London, but it wasn't a problem, because I'd ridden so much of my life. And then my other problem, but I sort of managed, because I was studying physio. I'd been an athlete for a long time, being a swimmer, and I knew my body very well, but I continually had shin problems. Literally continually. I remember at school my shins hurting, and I think it's because I was a swimmer, so I was fit. I was fitter than I was strong, if that makes sense. So I could run for a long time, but my legs wouldn't be ready for it. And so I managed that through university. Like when I was on placement, I get people to look at my shins, and the one of the national sort of medical centres for the Olympic team, or the youth team, so to speak, got support, and I actually had a placement at that hospital, so I could also go and see and get extra treatment. I remember having acupuncture in my shins. They tried everything. I got orthotics, and I just managed it. It never like completely went away, but I could still train, because I just would swim more or run less or work it out that way. And then that all changed when I went to train full time, and that's when like it got more difficult, and I moved to the National Training Centre, which was amazing. And so I finished my degree, and I was like, probably should get a real job to like actually put into practice what I've learned, because there's in the UK you need to go and work in the NHS. I'm sure most people have heard of our healthcare system, but it's a good way of learning as a young physio, but you can't get a part-time job. So it was either or. It was either, and I was given an ultimatum by the coaches that I need to either come and do this sport, or we'll go and have a fun life, whatever you're going to do, kind of thing. So it was a bit of an ultimatum, and I took a while to sort of think on it, and had like fun summer, and went out to watch the Athens Olympics, and I competed earlier in the summer, and then I just went on holidays and just enjoyed myself, and then like in the autumn, and thought, what am I actually going to do? And I applied for a couple of physio jobs, and thought, okay, if I get them, I'll go and do physio. If I don't, I'll go and do pentathlon. Probably not the way you should really like assess a situation like that, and it's probably why I didn't get the jobs, because I mean, who's going to get a job going into it like that, going, oh, I've got another option, I might do it instead. So long and short of it, I ended up at the training centre, probably not wanting it as much as I should have done, in hindsight, looking back at it. But it was an amazing opportunity, and I was no longer a student. I was suddenly a full-time athlete, getting from being a student in debt to actually having some money that I could spend, and I was living with in a house share with a group of boys who were all students, which probably wasn't the best influence either. And I enjoyed it. It was a new city. I was meeting new people, and yes, I was training. But then a few things kind of went wrong. It was a culmination of a lot of things. And a year later, I'd been injured. My shins got a lot worse, and it was hard to explain to the coaches, that I'd managed this. It hadn't just come on, and to also explain to them that I was equally as frustrated, and I want to train. I'm not a lazy athlete. I'm a lazy person, but I'm not a lazy athlete if I've got a goal. And so it frustrated me like mad, because I just wanted to run. And I remember just like standing at a bus stop and seeing someone just run across the road, and like being close to tears, because I was like, I can't do that without pain. But it's not the pain that would make me cry, because the pain was not that bad. It's what the pain meant. It meant that I was not allowed to run until that went, because, eventually you get a stress fracture. So this went on, and eventually the coach came with me to the doctor, and he's like, I think you're making this up, basically, and sat me on the couch, on the medical couch, and the doctor just touched my shins, and I literally leapt off the bed. And then the coach was like, oh, I didn't realise that they were that painful or sore, and they sent me for a scan, and long and short of it, there was a stress reaction, but that was a culmination of not quite of the coaches not quite understanding me and me not quite understanding them, the relationship was terminated basically. So a year later, I was just told to go. Go do whatever I wanted, but you're not on the program, you're not on the funding, out of the blue. So that was definitely the hardest part of my career. I didn't know. I'd been out of uni for almost 2 years. I still wanted to do the sport, but I had no support in it. I had no financial support, and also by then I was cut off, so I didn't have any help for injury. So it was a bit of a let's go home and just sulk for a bit. and then my parents were, okay, now you really do need to go and get a job. It's about time that you've had your fun, and fair enough. But I was like, just let me have one more chance. And by saying let me, I mean, they weren't paying for my career, and they didn't, luckily I managed to support myself through uni, but I was living under their roof then. I went back home. So, I had to within reason listen to them. But I said, look, I feel like I don't want to sit back in 10 years' time and see my friends, or 5 years' time, see my friends who I thought I could be as good as, standing on podiums when it could have been me. I might not be good enough, but I need to try so I can put that to bed. And yeah, I'm so glad I did that, because it took a while, and I got various jobs locally, but I went back to my old school. So it was weird going back, 5 years after I'd left, but they were so supportive, and there were some other athletes training there, some other athletes actually training for the Olympics, who'd also left school and were still in that swim group. So it was great that I wasn't the only school leaver there, and did a lot of my own running, worked with my swimming coach for my running as well, and so trained myself basically. Swimming was the key, and I built the rest around that, and then long and short of it, a year later, things just kind of went from better to better, and I qualified for the games as a wild card. I would say that it was at European Championships, and the first qualifying opportunity a year before the games. I was in pentathlon. You can send 4 athletes to each World Cup and to European Champs. It was European Championships in Latvia, sorry, and so I was number 4, and 3 scores count for the team. So the other 3 were in for the team competition. So I was literally they were like, well, we'll take it for experience. I was still living at home and training at home, and I won a silver medal. And it was top 8 to qualify for the Olympics. And it suddenly just turned the tables, obviously, and more discussions. It wasn't as straightforward as I'd hoped. I didn't get back on funding, because I didn't want to come back to Bath full time, because it hadn't worked the first time, and my coaches at home had put so much into helping me, and I got such a good relationship with them, and they just knew what worked for me. And so I got some support, and I had physio support, and my riding lessons were covered and things like that, but I still was working a little bit less, and it was only in the pub and teaching swimming, but they were very flexible with that. But it was more for myself, that I knew that I had to stay hungry and stay managing my own time and knowing what works for me. And yeah, it was a very stressful year, 2007, 2008, and I found the most stressful thing I found was people saying, oh, you're going to the Olympics, amazing. No, I'm not. I'm not necessarily going. And the way our selection system works in Britain, we're so strong at modern pentathlon that we qualified 5 girls, and there were 2 places. So that whole year was just like a competition against each other in a nasty way. And it's quite nice to be away from that and to be training on my own. And I think some of the other girls found that hard, because I think they wanted to know what I was doing. And but I was just very much it was a constant battle. I felt like I really had to prove myself even more, because I wasn't on the training program, and that probably pushed me to perform even better. And it was weird. It was by the time I got to the Olympics, I was relaxed, because that was the easy bit. The hard bit was up until 2 months before, and the cutoff was World Championships in Hungary. And I think I was the highest ranked going into that, but the other 2 girls were in the past were the ones who were expected to go to the games, and yeah, I kept it together. I had a good performance. I came 4th. One of the other British girls came 3rd, who was becoming one of my really, really close friends, and is now one of my best friends. And it was the most bizarre experience, because I finished 4th, And it was one of the happiest days of my life. Finishing fourth is normally a worse position, but I knew as I crossed that finish line, I was going to the games. But then still in a sport that's so small, it's so tough because the other two girls, as much as they're competitors, they're friends and they're good and they're better than half the other athletes going to the Olympics, but they couldn't go because they're British. And so, very emotional time. And then it was 2 months to actually know I was going, which was kind of a relief in the fact I knew exactly what I was training for. And then the rest is history, I guess. Sorry, that's probably already half an hour.
Yes. So what were your expectations then going into the Beijing Games? Was it, you said you were relaxed? Did you know you had a chance for a medal or?
I didn't really, and it was weird. I distinctly remember this moment at a training camp. We went to altitude in Font-Romeu in the French Pyrenees, and I remember the boys just talking about something, and I was like, they're talking about betting. I was like, what are you on about? And they were like, oh, do you know the odds on you girls? I'm like, there's odds. It's like you could even bet on pentathlon. Like I had no idea. And they were saying something about like odds for me to win a medal, and I was like, don't waste your money on that. But it was weird because I never thought outside of when you're away training. You're just training yourself, and you can only control yourself. And in our sport of pentathlon, you're riding an unknown horse. You don't ride your own horse, and that just throws such a massive curveball in. And in a sense, anything can happen. So all I could do was be the fittest I ever was in my life, which I was there. That was right, in the right mental state, so that you're going to shoot well. Fencing again. Yes, you can be having an amazing fencing day, but you're fencing somebody else who just reacts differently to the way you do, and they end up hitting you, and you fence everyone in pentathlon. So I find it an easy way to get my head around it, that it's all I could control was myself, and I was going to control that to my utmost, but the actual result wasn't controllable. It was my performance was, but where I finished wasn't. And I was lucky in the fact that I was going with another girl who's going to her first games, and we just got on. Like, she was the most supportive competitor. Like, she was never my competitor unless we were, fencing each other. When we go around together and you fence, and it was such a nice experience in that sense. And going out there, I didn't even really take in the fact I was ranked 5th in the world at the time, and I didn't even know that. Like, I had a number 5 on my fencing mask, and I stood in the 5th position in the shooting range, and I didn't once think, oh, that's like 2 places off the podium. Well, that's not very far. It didn't occur to me because I'd had to work so hard to get there. I was at the Olympics. No one could take that away. I was competing in Beijing. It was like for Team GB, and that was just such a big thing that actually the competition was like, oh, I've got to do a competition. I've done lots of these. I know what I'm doing in pentathlon, and just got to do it again.
Yeah. Okay. So So you ended up winning the silver. What happened afterwards?
Well, a lot changed. A lot of amazing parties and great lots of photo shoots and fun things like that, and all the kind of the glitz and glamour of it. But also a lot more respect within my sport and the sporting industry, and just the opportunities that opened up were immense. And yes, I lived off that for a couple of years, and there was a big kind of changing point only a few months after the games, which initially I found really hard, but helped me in the long run. So our sport had a massive change in its format, and it used to be, way back when it was completely different again before I did it. But when I was competing, it was the shooting, then fencing, then swimming, then the horse riding, then the running, all separate. Now they proposed to put the shooting and the running events together, to combine them and have them at the end of the day. So in a completely different format. So you're shooting out of breath. It's more about speed and accuracy, but previous shooting was purely about accuracy and controlling yourself. And it really suited me because the shooting was in the morning, and I was always like half asleep still in the morning. So like even at the Olympics, I shared a room. We had a choice of having separate rooms, but I shared with Katie because we always share at normal competitions. So why would you change anything for the Olympics? It's still another competition. It's the same athletes. So we shared, and I remember her getting, she's like, "Are you coming?" And I couldn't get up. I remember pressing snooze on the morning of the Olympics. Like, everyone's like, "You don't sleep the day before a big competition," and I couldn't wake up. I was like, Oh, I can't wait till I can have a lie-in because we were still a bit jet lagged. We only went out there on the Monday afternoon and we competed on Friday. So it's 8 hour time difference and it was killing me. And I just remember like thinking, oh, I'll have this at breakfast. And I had to like rush to go and eat my breakfast and get the bus because I couldn't get up on that morning. That's how like the same it was for me. I completely digressed. Don't know what I was talking about before that.
No,
I
just
guess after
the change of format in the sport.
thank you. And then combine the two together, and I was a bit not sure if I wanted to carry on with the sport. Suddenly the sport I got good at just changed. But actually, it gave me it was almost like a blank slate the next year because I hadn't won a medal in this format. So it took expectation off me and it gave me a new challenge. And I took it up fairly quickly. I won a silver at Europeans next year and a few other medals, I think. World Championships for the whole team were a disaster. We had them in the UK, in London. Amazing opportunity. And we didn't win a medal. I think we won a medal in the team, but we didn't win any individual medals or one in the relay. And I messed up massively it was a different type of relay. It was two girls in a team. So they had a women's relay and a men's relay. And I was the strongest athlete in the British team at the run shoot, the combined event as it was called. And we should have won it, probably like 100% won a medal. We should have won it. We were in a good position going in. And the other girl, Mari, went first and I went in the second, like the anchor leg because I was strong. And I don't know what happened, but I couldn't hit that target. And I don't know if my gun was faulty or I think it's probably just I got too excited in my nerves, but it hadn't ever hit me before. After that, I really questioned what I was doing. And I was in a bit of a horrible place because it was like a come down after their games. Like it probably was a bit more delayed come down than some people. And I was like, I don't know if I still want to do this sport. I don't know what I want to do. And there was still one more competition left that year, 3 weeks later. And I basically just went, and the coaches didn't mind about it. It wasn't a big year. It was a World Cup final, so it was a big event, but no sort of pressure was on it. And I just thought, okay, I'll go out there. My main aim for that competition was to enjoy it, was to like not be going, I can't wait for this day to be over, to actually embrace each moment and like be in it. And I did very little training. Admittedly, I was fit before it, but I came forth out there with very little training and performed well because I was relaxed again and I was happy. And then it was that time of decide, do I train for London or not? And I did. And I didn't make it to London, but I don't regret staying on and training. It was, a great few years with lots of opportunities and I had more funding and I had more ability to be more flexible with my training. Being a full-time athlete on the whole is great. So it was, and I seem to be, touch wood, injury-free. I've become a much stronger athlete. So I actually had less injuries later in my career than I did early.
Yeah, okay. And not being selected for London 2012, was that what decided you to stop, to end the career?
Well, I missed, it was probably the second hardest moment of my career. It came down to, again, I think 4 of us qualified for London, so I qualified for the London Games, and going into them, I think I was ranked 9th in the world, but I wasn't competing, or 10th. I was in the top 10, I know that, which is hard to take because you're there, knowing these athletes are going to be competing, and there's 36 athletes on the start line, and I'm 10th in the world, and I'm not on that start line, and that was very hard to deal with to start with, and I think it really would have broken me 4 years earlier if I'd been a young athlete, initially. What helped me was black and white. So it came down to World Championships, and the 2 girls who went to the Games deserved to go because they won the gold and the bronze at the World Championships 2 months before. So basically a role reversal of what had happened 4 years earlier. And for that, there was no animosity because it wasn't the coach's discretion. It was nothing like that. It was just, so I can deal with this. I'm going to carry on. I'm going to compete at Europeans and I'll compete next year and work out what I'm doing. But at the time, I just wanted to disappear, and I didn't want to hear anything about the Olympics. I didn't want to see anything about the Olympics. And just the word Olympic just made me. I just wanted to literally hide under a duvet for 2 months until the Olympics was over, and then get back on with my life. And I was genuinely looking at where can I go in the world and do some volunteering work that I can just escape from it. But then I was on the other hand, I was that's really quite childish and quite immature, and no one died. This is sport, and I need to I need to realize that, and I need to be supportive of the girls and the team that are going. And when I was still struggling with this, and I had a contract about to sign and on a photo shoot for a great deal, and I just remember like knowing I couldn't tell the sponsor that I wasn't going to the games because it wasn't announced. And I remember just feeling like such a fraud and hating this moment. But I had a phone call that day from the BBC asking if I would be interested in commentating at the games. And I'd already started to do a fair bit of media work by then. I did some work with the local BBC and my local newspaper and things. And I really wanted to do more in media. And I was just like, that is the most amazing opportunity. And I'd already done a bit of been out to Delhi and experienced it from the other side before, and I just thought if I'm not going to go to the games, I'm going to turn it around and make it the most positive experience I can. And I genuinely, hand on heart, had an amazing 2.5 weeks, and I saw loads of friends compete. I went partying with I went to all the events that I wouldn't have been able to do if I was an athlete. I went and spoke to my sponsors and met people, caught up with friends, like all the athletes who compete in the first half. We never got to see them before because pentathlon was always at the end. And commentating on the event was surreal. It was really weird. I could have been there, but I never felt. I was also enjoying what I was doing at the same time, which was probably, as a result, 2012 was a massive help in my career transition. Yeah, really big help. It kind of made me realize I could get joy in sport through a different way as well. And then, so I was like, well, I didn't know if I wanted to carry on for another 4 years to Rio, because it just seemed like originally when I basically qualified for the games, I'd only really trained for 2 years properly. And the thought of, I'd already doubled that for London, and then the disappointment. And I was like, I don't know if I can do another 4 years and then maybe not get there. And I know you shouldn't ever think like that, but that is realistic. Before you make your mind up, once you've made your mind up, you can't think about it. But beforehand, you need to. And I couldn't decide. And I wanted to do Worlds in 2013 and finish at a World Champs and say, okay. Sadly, that choice was taken away from me, and the coaches decided that they wanted to give young ones the opportunity in 2013. And I competed at a World Cup early in the year, and I was a top Brit. It wasn't an amazing performance, but top 10 finish. It was February. I wasn't that fit, but I was running and swimming better than I had been in 2012 for that time of year. And I was feeling really positive, and I was like, yeah, I think it's going to be a good season. And I came back from that trip 2 days after my 30th birthday, and basically told that I wouldn't be selected for any more competitions irrelevant of my results. And it was it was a kick in the teeth, for sure, and something that's made me determined to try and I was on the British Athletes Commission, or the British Team GB have an Athletes Commission, or Athletes Advisory Group, and I was a member of that, and made me more determined to help athletes with transition and when things are taken out of your control, because I felt just there was nothing I could do. I was told that, and that's the most frustrating thing. So I think as an athlete, you like to be in control and make your own decisions. And admittedly, I might have made that decision that year anyway. And as a result, and I think retiring from sport is such a hard thing to do, because it's an amazing lifestyle, and you're an athlete. You always want to do better. You always, you pick out every performance and say, I could change that. I could do that better. I could do that better. And when do you say, okay, I couldn't do that better? I don't think you ever do. So actually, I needed a kick, but I think it could have come in a nicer way. And again, the next year or two were tough, but I also had some amazing experiences, and look back on it as it was probably a really good time to move on. I just didn't know that myself.
Okay. And that move became triathlon. It must have been a piece of cake now, training for only 3 sports instead of 5.
Well, it took me a long time to do triathlon, because I sort of, watched it, and I don't know if you, Flora Duffy, who's dominating the world in triathlon at the moment, she was at Kelly College at my school with me. Okay. So, and Flora actually looked after me at the night after winning my medal in Beijing, because I was a bit worse for wear. So, so now it's she was there as a real novice, I suppose you could even say, her first Olympics, and now she's excelling. And I remember just not really even knowing. I trained alongside her for swimming and didn't really understand what triathlon was, and lots of pentathletes had retired and gone on to triathlon, at a low level, because it's just you just add cycling. But I didn't cycle. yeah, I cycled as a kid, but I didn't have a road bike, and so how do I start this? And 2013 again it was kind of good timing. I was looking for adventures when I was wondering what else to do, and I just started cycling at the time when I basically was told, you're no longer doing pentathlon. So and then there was a local charity who were doing a ride from the top of Scotland, so John O'Groats, down to Land's End, bottom of Cornwall. So 1,000 miles, or just shy of 1,000 miles. And I'd not really ridden a bike before, and they were like, "Do you want to do this?" And basically, you can get a good discount on a bike. All you need to do is just support our charity, and you can do this event. And I was like, "That sounds amazing," but I've not really ridden a bike, and it's like average 109 miles a day. And I was like, okay, so I first got on a bike on the 4th of March, I think it was, the day after my birthday, and did a few rides, but I hadn't decided to do this until like a month before. And I remember just, like worried that I couldn't get my head around how my body could physically do that, because I hadn't really done anything endurance wise, and people telling me, oh, you need to at least done a few 90-mile rides and all of this, and I'd sort of done the odd 40-mile ride, and started to like, when I finished pentathlon, started to up it a bit. The longest ride I did was 70 miles, and I remember being absolutely exhausted. And I was just like, I can't get my head around how this is possible, because I come from a sport where you swim 200 meters, but you do a session of 15 200s in a normal session. Like, so you're overdoing the distance, and I couldn't. Anyway, I set off and was just trying to pace myself, and I think it's how the fitness carries over, because all the people I cycled with, I made some like lifelong friends, and I had an amazing time, because it was a chance to talk lots, eat lots, and do exercise every day. It's like 3 of my favorite things. and seeing beautiful countryside. And I never had a low day, and like everyone else pretty much had one day when they struggled, but I think I was the only person who put on weight with that. I ate so much for 10 days, and like most people think I'm completely mad, but I got home, and the next day I went out on my bike after those 10 days. And I was like, what do I do next? And but it still took me another 2 years till I did my first triathlon, because I just took me a while to like, I guess it was a weird one, like to kind of get the confidence that am I good enough to do a triathlon. I don't really know. I just sort of rode my bike for a bit of fun. I never trained on it. I just went riding and did a few half marathons and stuff. And then I wanted a challenge, like a big enough challenge to make me do some training. And people were like, oh, why don't you do a triathlon? You should do an Olympic distance triathlon. And I was like, no offense, but like I knew I could do an Olympic distance triathlon without training. Yes, it would be slow and look awful and would be painful, but I could do it. So I thought, originally I was like, I'll do an Ironman because I had to train. But then the more I looked into it, I just like, I think for my first I probably should just rein it in a bit. So I chose a half, and I didn't like train properly. I would say I did exercise for it rather than training. But I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And then I didn't do another one until the year after. And then it was last year, then I was like, right, I think it's about time I start doing this properly, and decided I was going to do an Ironman, and actually got a coach and did some training. And the first time I ever heard about what a watt was, and all of those kind of things. So it was a massive learning curve. And still the thought, like I'd never run a marathon or anything. And I was just like, I don't know if my body can do this, but there's only one way to find out. And I genuinely really, really enjoyed it. I got a bit bored towards the end of the run because it just going on and on. But other than that, like I did it in South Africa. The weather was nice, people were friendly, and I was just learning as I went, so to speak. And it was just a really great experience.
Yeah. And you qualified for Kona immediately.
Yes, that wasn't part of the plan. So I've been working very much freelance, mainly in summer sport, doing lots of commentary and announcing. So I got to work at the Rio Games, and I worked at the Paralympic Games in Rio as well, which is amazing. I was announcing in the stadium for pentathlon. And then for the Paralympic Games, I was actually commentating on swimming. So I got to commentate on some of my good friends swimming in the paras. I commentated on the fencing as well. So yeah, that was amazing. But then, sorry, I've gone. What was I? Well, how did I start talking about Brazil? Oh, because my job. So yeah, a lot more of my work was in summer based, and winter was much quieter. So I thought, well, it makes sense to enter triathlon in April, because I can train hard in the winter and I don't have to work as much. I kind of didn't take into fact that the weather is awful in the UK in the winter, and it really sucks. But yeah, it worked okay. I had a couple of trips with work like to California that I extended and took my bike with me. So I got some sunshine and things. But then, the plan had been, so, don't worry about the summer. I'll just be back to work and I might do the odd shorter triathlon. And I came second in my age group. I had no idea where I was all day. Like I didn't even ever think about it. Didn't want to enter my mind. I remember when my coach had said, like at one point, he's like, oh, imagine you could maybe qualify for Kona. It's before I even started training. And I was like, what is Kona? I genuinely didn't know what this thing was and probably shouldn't admit this. But I was just going in completely blind. And then he rang me on Skype afterwards. He's like, oh, good performance, Heather. You need to check if you've qualified. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, I've done some calculations and, you've come second, so you might have qualified for Kona. I'm like, well, what does that actually mean? Like, I know what Kona is now, but like, what does that mean? What do I do? And he's like, well, last year the top 3 in my age group got slots, and he said basically you have to turn up the next day and make your mind up by that morning. But I hadn't planned to stay the night there. We were going back to my friend and we were going out, and my boyfriend had enough after watching me for 11 hours. Home now. And then I was on the phone and I was like, as we're walking back to the car, I was like, we just need to have a moment. We just need to have a quick chat. And also I said I was only doing one triathlon, like one Ironman. So suddenly we were like, oh, we might need to stay another night because potentially I might have to do another Ironman. And it was just quite a lot to take in. We're like, what is this? How much does it cost? Like, where is it? Hawaii? Looking on the map, like, oh my God, that's a long way away. Like, but then I was like, hang on, I might not have even qualified. This is all hypothetical. So we found somewhere cheap to stay, and we thought, well, I'll go to the awards thing the next morning, and if I've not got a slot, then that answers that question. If I have, then I'm going to hope my credit card can afford to pay for this, like, ridiculously. And again, it's a weird mindset because I'm used to going to World Championships where it wouldn't ever cost me a penny and I could potentially win money. Whereas now I'm paying to go to something I've qualified for. And it was a really weird mindset. Like, I now understand how age group triathlon worked, and also the fact that I was going to World Championships, but as an age group, and it really sat, like when I first came into triathlon, I couldn't get my head around that because I'm like, you can go to Worlds and represent your country, but you're not the best, and I took a long time to get over that, of like, also because people would say, oh, I didn't want people thinking that oh, you're going to go to the Olympics in triathlon, and like my running's not quick enough, and I'm not training at that level, and I'm not trying to do that, but I think that's also why I took a while to get into it, because I really wanted to have fully retired and people not to think I'm making like a comeback. And I had got my head around it, that it was more an Ironman for me was a challenge to finish the race, and hopefully finish it still smiling. And I did. So that's why then suddenly I was like, I don't know if I want to do another one. I need to work out if I want to enough, because if I need to want to have to train. And we thought about it and then thought, well, it could be a nice holiday afterwards. And I got some media coverage for the result in South Africa with local BBC and things. And I was like, well, I can see if I can get some sponsorship and get some networks through it and work with some companies. And so I was like, okay, and paid my $1,000 gulp. And then I was like, right, I'm on holiday in South Africa for a week. We'll think about it when I get home. And then everything, I'd started to it took me a long time to get motivated again because I hadn't thought of doing another one, but I had time. It was fine. And trying to work out how to fundraise, and lots of people were really supportive, and I was starting to talk to some local companies who seemed really keen. And then suddenly GTN came along, and I remember in the meeting with the producer, basically my boss, and he's like, have you got any commitments? I was like, well, I need some time off in October because I'm going to Hawaii. I'm like, well, you'll be going with work. and I was like, what? He's like, have you booked your flights yet? I was like, no, I haven't got around to that. Have you booked your accommodation? No. So suddenly I was like, oh, and then people were joking. It's like, I think on one of the bios when we first launched the channel, on the social media, they put pro triathlete Heather Fallon Mark Purple. I'm like, I'm not a pro triathlete. Don't label me like. And my boss was like, well, you're being paid to do triathlon. Like, that doesn't count. So I got to go in a very different capacity to what I ever imagined. Like a year before, I didn't really know what Kona was, and the next year I'm there racing it whilst working out there as well. I mean, quite crazy.
So triathlon is a job now. You work for the network, and you produce these movies on the YouTube channel, and then you still train besides that, and then you've got other goals for 2018.
I've struggled. This is my first ever full-time job, and the summer was very, very tough because I I'd only trained for an Ironman once, and I'd done that as a freelance worker. So I'd managed to train in the daytime, and suddenly having to fit 2 sessions in a day around a channel that was just launching. So we were working much longer hours than normal, and we were more sporadic than normal, and we were getting different kit, and I had to obviously conform with what kit we were sponsored with. So I was trying out new bikes, and I loved the bike I had, and I had to give that up, and we didn't know when we were getting the new bikes, but I wasn't allowed to ride anything branded. And so there was a lot of things that actually underneath were much more stressful than they looked. And I was like, I'd rather have a lower spec kit that I know and is perfectly fitting me than an amazing, top of the range time trial bike. I only got on a time trial bike for the first time in February last year. So literally this time last year, I was just venturing onto a time trial bike. By the summer, I was riding the Cervelo P5X, which is like top of the range, ridiculous machine. So, kind of crazy. And I loved, the chance of Hawaii and Hawaii itself, but I also was exhausted, like really exhausted. And I did say that if I ever do it again, I would take holiday and do it as holiday, even just that week, because I didn't have a moment to even really, I didn't need to do that much training, but I got one swim in that I'd managed to jump in across from our hotel one evening and just went out and swam in the sea. And I had an injury that had happened, and I hadn't really managed to sort it out properly. And I was even changing the wheels of my bike, and I was getting different, trying to get a power meter fixed because I've been riding a different bike, but I was told I had to ride the P5X. So all of this was happening, and I just afterwards I was like, I need a break, and I had the 5 weeks off and got really unfit, but I think I needed it. And I was like, okay, I'll start getting back into things, and I planned to focus on running at the beginning of this year, and it's like, right, beginning of December I'll start training. Didn't really. I ran cross country and ended up getting picked for my county to run again in the inter-counties, and ran that just after Christmas. No more fit than I was the month before because Christmas got in the way. And then I've done well enough that I'm now competing at the national inter-counties again for Devon. So I've got targets, but this year I'm focusing on shorter stuff, and I want to get some speed back. And ultimately, at the moment, all I'm doing is running, because the UK winter, Europe's winter is tough. It's dark, and I'm running. I just yesterday entered a marathon on Saturday, which is a bit silly because I've run the furthest I've run is, well, I ran 12 miles yesterday with a friend, but we're doing it socially. It's off road, but I'm ultimately training for Bath Half, which is in just under 4 weeks, and then I've got my cross country the week after that. But I want to try and run some fast 5 and 10Ks, and then I just want to try new things this year. So I'd quite like to have a go at some cross country, as in mountain biking, and a cross country triathlon. Our boss is really keen for us to do Xterra in Malta, but I've never done a cross triathlon, and that's the thing on the channel. It's great, we get these opportunities, but you're literally out there for everyone to judge you. And I'm not sure I don't know what level it is. And I have a mountain bike, I ride it at home a lot, and I'm trying to sort of work out, get my skills up. And I'm lucky that swimming as an age grouper, I can go and swim for a couple of months beforehand, and I'll be fine. That's something that I swam as a baby, basically. So and I like to see all those 20 hours a week for 5 years are in the bank somewhere. So yes, I think this year is very much about trying to get a bit faster with my running, and to see if I can get near to my old PBs, because if I'm focusing mainly on my running, I'm not having to ride a horse or fence or shoot or what's the other one I did, swim. I'm not having to do those. So in theory, if I concentrate mainly on my running and use swimming and cycling to kind of keep the fitness and the aerobic stuff there, then I'd like to think I should be able to run quite well. But one of my, and I think it will affect me quite quickly, and running will help with that, but I put on a bit of weight over Christmas, which I normally do, and the Bath Half always comes too soon. So that's, I'm just seeing where I can get with my running and within injury free. I'm in my mid 30s, but I feel like I don't have that many miles on the clock because I had lots of time. I was, late before I got to sort of intense stuff, and I've not done that much endurance running, so we'll see. And then in 2019, I really want to do some ultras, and I'd love to do Comrades in South Africa. I was chatting to a friend who's keen to do it with me. So this year's shorter, next year's longer, and we'll see where the triathlons fit in with work and what we're going to feature and things. So it's hard because we need to fit with work's calendar, but as in we will actually do it with the channel. So it's a matter of kind of working out what each presenter wants to do and how the channel's year looks as well.
Yeah, okay. No, it sounds like a nice bucket list. And yeah, welcome to our world. I mean, that's what we do every day. We work and then we try to fit the training around it.
I know. It sounds like, I was talking to someone at lunchtime today and asking how my train's going, and I said, I'm complete respect for it. I have so much respect for age groupers. I just don't know how people do it. And like when I was in Hawaii and just seeing these people like flying past me who have amazing jobs and have kids, and I'm like, how do you do that? I don't know. And I think it's incredible. And I know how spoiled I was as a pentathlete. Yes, we were training for 5 sports, and yes, I was working, but I was working part-time jobs, and I had daylight hours, and I really just massive respect to any athlete out there who has the motivation to keep going through the winter and whatever the weather. And I have just signed up to Zwift, and I'm trying to get a turbo, so I've never really done turbo training, and I think that would help me a lot as well if I can sort myself out with that.
Yeah. No, it's unbelievable what some of these age groupers do. I mean, especially those, what you call elite age groupers, the guys that definitely are aiming for the podiums in their age group. I mean, you work a full-time week and then you're able to train 25 to 30 hours. It's insane. I can't believe it either.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I managed to do it in the summer, but because it was a short period, and the summer you've got daylight hours, but I didn't do anything else. Like my friends were neglected, my family were neglected, and I couldn't do that. That's why now I want to just sort of have a bit more of a healthy balance, I think.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious to see what the divorce rates are in Ironman triathlon. I think it must be quite high.
Or you have a triathlete as a partner.
Yeah, that might be the best option. All right, thanks so much for your time, Heather. How can people get in touch with you?
Well, I'm on Twitter. It's Heather Fell News. My agent set it up years ago, so don't ask me about the news because I don't really give you any news. And my Instagram is Fells Food and Fitness, so Fell as in Heather Fell. And that is pretty much what it says on the tin. Like, I love sport and I love food, so there'll be pictures of that. Although recently there'll be quite a lot of my puppy on there as well. I apologise if people don't like dogs, but he is very cute. Well, I think so anyway. But then I guess that's what parents like with their children, and most other people afford. And Facebook, I'm just Heather Fell Official. Or send us a message at GTN. I look at all the stuff all the social media we have on GTN as well. Yeah, definitely put the link up to the YouTube channel as well. Feel free to give some love to your partners and sponsors that you have there for the moment. Well, I mean, it's strange this year though, and this time last year, I just signed a deal with an amazing team. I was part of a cycling team, which was completely bizarre to me, but loving it, called Cannondale Girls, and amazing kit and great bikes, and it was my first time ever riding a bike other than my entry-level road bike that I'd had for 4 years. And sadly, some other opportunities arose, but I couldn't carry on with that with GTN. So GTN as a channel, we have to wear everything that come with GTN, and we're not, we endorse everything with that. So it's great that we don't have to worry about what we get, but we do also have to use what we get. And we've just started, we've just got on running shoes, and I'm experimenting with them, and I like them, but I've run in Adidas for years and years, so it's taking a while to sort of work out which shoe works for me and things like that. And we still don't have a wetsuit sponsor, and I've used for years Blue 70, who've been amazing to me, and the Helix is just a lovely suit. And being a strong swimmer, it's nice to know that I've got a great swimming brand that have always supported me. But so I don't have any official sponsors, but there's lots of people who've helped. And I guess a year ago it would have been a very different piece right now. But our channel is we've got some big sponsors, and we've just bike-wise we've got Cervelo and BMC, and I am just spoiled. Last year I was absolutely flabbergasted by the fact that I was riding a time trial bike, and I was happy to go to my first Ironman on my road bike with my aero bars on, and I was like, what's wrong with my road bike? And my coach tried to explain to me, and I had no idea. Now I look at it and I'm like, how could I have ridden that? How did I think that was a great bike? And I've learned so much this year, but being completely spoiled as well, like the kit that we get to use and the bikes and everything is it's pretty cool. Yeah, the perks sometimes, it's fun. Anything else you want to plug? I don't think so. I should have thought about this beforehand. I'll probably think afterwards. But no, that's the weird thing about, like, I always would have had like a list of, I've always been freelance and the athlete trying to get sponsors and support and networking, and now I have just a normal job. Well, as normal as doing triathlon and being out filming and stuff is, but yeah, I don't.
All right, now cool. We'll plug GTN one more time.
But yeah. Well, the Global Triathlon Network. So basically, we are doing pretty much a video every day. We're doing about 6 videos a week, and it's anything from pro bikes to inside tips to funny pieces to interviews with pros to us doing vlog style stuff. I'm working on a couple of interesting videos at the moment, which is fun when we get to actually investigate stuff that interests me. And I've got a degree in physio and I love anything to do with nutrition. So that sciencey side, I love to have the opportunity to kind of look into the biomechanics. And my only problem is I have to rein myself back because I start like today, one of the guys in the office was asking like, we started talking about compression socks and then it got on shin splints. And he's like, what are shin splints? I was like, oh, you ask. And literally 5 minutes later, he's looking at me with a blank face. And I was like, do you realize we've made a video on this? Just watch the video. But on that video, I wanted to go into more detail. And I have to sort of say, okay, this is a 5-minute video. And most people watching do not need to know what, actually happens underneath the, to the bone and the periosteum and everything. And so I have to sometimes, I get quite excited with the sciencey side of things as well.
Okay, well, we'll definitely put the links up there as well. Thanks for your time, Heather. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Peter.
Alright, guys, thanks for listening to this extra long episode with Heather Feld. If you have suggestions for possible future guests, it would be cool if you could shoot me an email at peter@junkiepodcast.com, and I will try to make that happen. Right, thanks again for listening, and I hope you'll join me next time for a chat with Australian pro cyclist Tiffany Cromwell. Cheers, guys.